But anyways, jumping into the topic, like I said, my beautiful girlfriend Tristan and I, we just finished watching the new Shane Dawson series where he talked about Chuck E. Cheese, that voice changer thing that was really goofy. And then also we talked with his good friend, Brittany Louise Taylor, and her abusive relationship. Great job. I am interested in checking out her book now to learn a little bit more about it. Tristan actually sent me a video of a book review, and the story is really interesting. And there's a bunch of different angles I could take on it. I went on Twitter and I asked all of you, like, what mental health topics would you like me to cover? And everybody was saying the Brittany Louise Taylor story. So they did an excellent job. I think, you know, the audience can empathize and hopefully understand what Brittany was going through and, you know, why it was so difficult to leave that relationship. But something I'm gonna be talking about in this video, which was left out of that video, and no fault of Shane, by the way, but I wanna talk about signs of abuse, how to leave an abusive relationship, okay? So in this video, we're actually going to be talking about the National Domestic Violence Hotline, okay? So I'm gonna be going off of some things in this, so please, if you are in an abusive relationship or if you know somebody who is, like, make sure you share this website with them, all right? So when you first go onto the website, you get this little pop-up and it basically tells you like, because sometimes the abuser will monitor your, you know, computer activity, your phone activity. Like, there's an easy way to like just hit escape or the X or whatever, and it takes you to Google. So if they're walking in the room, boom, you just do that, all right? So before I dive into that and kind of like the signs of abuse and relating it to Brittany Louise Taylor's story, like, let's get this out of the way real quick. Like, men need to be better, but I will say, you know, abusive women need to be better too. Some of you, you know, acknowledge that, yeah, a man can be getting abused as well. I've shared some of my stories where I have been in emotionally abusive relationships. Some of them got a little physical where I was, you know, being abused. I'm not afraid to talk about that. So this can happen both ways, but abusers need to get their act together, all right? So what I wanna do in this video, I wanna go through, you know, this power and control wheel, which is at the National Domestic Abuse Hotline website, and talk about Brittany Louise Taylor's story, and hopefully you guys can recognize some of these signs that either you might be going through or a friend might be going through, or it'll help you spot the red flags earlier on in a relationship, okay? All right, so according to the power and control wheel, some of the signs to look for are using intimidation, using emotional abuse, using isolation, minimizing, denying, and blaming, using children, using male privilege, using economic abuse, using coercion and threats. So there's a few that I wanna touch on specifically from what was mentioned in the Shane Dawson video that Brittany Louise Taylor talked about. There might be more examples of this in her book, like where she dives deeper, but I wanna use some examples from the actual video. All right, so first, obviously, using intimidation. Making her afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, destroying her property, abusing pets, displaying weapons, all right? So there was a lot of intimidation. Like, you saw the text messages that he was sending her, or she explained the things that he would say to her, like when she was like trying to leave, all right? Using emotional abuse, putting her down, making her feel bad about herself, calling her names, making her think she's crazy, playing mind games, humiliating her, making her feel guilty. So, like, making her feel guilty. So there was the part where Brittany Louise Taylor talked about how he was like coming at her, and, you know, and then she was like kind of like defending herself, and she, you know, poked him in the eye, and he said he had to go to the eye doctor, and she talked about feeling guilty for defending herself, all right? And, you know, this is a form of gaslighting as well, trying to make the other person feel bad. That's in a form of manipulation. And like, one of the reasons is called the power and control wheel. A lot of abuse, like a lot of the dynamic in an abusive relationship is about one person having power over the other person. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand is this thing can be slow, okay? This can take time. Like, over time, the person breaks the person down, the abuser breaks the abused down so they feel smaller and smaller and smaller and weaker and weaker and weaker, all right? Using isolation, controlling what she does, who she sees and talks to, what she reads, where she goes, limiting her outside involvement, using jealousy to justify actions, all right? So like some of this was like, she talked a little bit about how like, she didn't really go out that much. There was, you know, parts where, you know, he didn't want her like seeing her family and things like that. And it was like, that was a really weird story, really weird. And I think we can all agree on that. But yeah, like Britney didn't really have people to turn to. And I'm gonna talk about the fact that she was a YouTuber in just a second too. All right, so another perfect example for this situation is using children, making her feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages, using visitation to harass her, threatening to take the children away. So like, there were different examples, but he definitely was using the fact that she was pregnant and the child and all these things, you know, to keep her in that relationship. Like, that's the thing, like, from the outside, and I talked about this in my Illymation video too, from the outside looking in, it's easy to be like, well, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you know? And it's scary. It's very, very scary when someone's threatening you, when someone's threatening your child, when someone's threatening to hurt your family, right? But he was using the child as a way to control Britney Louise Taylor. So then, using coercion and threats, making and or carrying out threats to do something to hurt her, threatening to leave her, to commit suicide, to report her to welfare, making her drop charges, making her do illegal things. So this is something that, I don't know, it might have gone in that story, but like they talked about how there was like a call girl involved and things like that. That was kind of weird. It did, you know, and I'm sure Shane Dawson had tons of footage that was left out, but this can happen in abusive relationships. Getting the other person to do illegal acts, and you know, that's a form of intimidation too. But also like threats. So this is something that, you know, she may have been dealing with as the victim. So something that Shane talked about, and it's something that, you know, I was thinking and all that, was that Britney Louise Taylor is a YouTuber. She's a big YouTuber, right? She has a huge, massive audience. Like, why didn't this Milos dude pick somebody else? You know what I mean? And here's, like, I just want to bring up two topics, okay? So one of them is, like, some people are hiding in plain sight, all right? So it's important to look for different signs of abuse. Like, it's important, like, I read a book on body language, and like they talk about like things to look for in a person, because, you know, this is what FBI agents or even police officers or investigators use, like when they're looking at children or they're looking at, you know, partners who might be abused, like the way that their body is behaving around the abuser. Because what Britney was doing was, like you saw, she was vlogging with him, acting like everything was happy and honky-dory and all of that. But some people, they have bruises, and obviously, you know, some people try to cover up for the abuser and say, oh, it was an accident, I fell, this happened, that happened, you know, or whatever. But like, by knowing like not only the body language, but where like a bruise might be, like it's very important to learn those things if you think somebody might be in an abusive relationship. But also noticing this wheel, right? If like you have a friend who's in a new relationship and they're starting to get isolated, or the other person's controlling the money. Like one of the things in here was like the economic abuse, where like this, I didn't read that one, but usually it's like the person is afraid to leave because they're financially dependent on the other person. But in this case, like Britney was supporting him, and this can be something else too. And that can be, you know, part of it can turn into like codependency, where you want to help this other person, you keep doing this and you're trying to protect them and all of that. But aside from like hiding in plain sight, like something I want to touch on, and like this is just something I just keep trying to talk to all of you guys about, is that we need to realize that what we're seeing on social media is not always the reality. Whether it's with a YouTuber, whether it's like somebody on Instagram, it might even be your friends or family on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Like, just realize what people are putting out there on social media is not always the reality. And the only reason I talk about that is so you don't base your self-worth, your self-love off of what you're seeing other people posting. And Britney Louise Taylor is a prime example of that, because there was a lot going on behind the scenes that nobody knew about, right? But the last thing I will touch on with this story is, like, I am super proud of Brittany Louise Taylor, not only for like writing a book and being open about this, but then going on like Shane Dawson's channel for like a video that's gonna get tens of millions of views to open on. Like, that is so inspirational. This is something that I've been talking with other creators about. It's something that I'm always trying to teach you. Like, we're all at different points in our recovery, but just realize that your story is powerful. Your story can help somebody else. So I'm so grateful that Shane Dawson and Brittany Louise Taylor got together and they're able to, you know, give this a platform and talk about how abuse is not okay. You don't have to go through this. And especially for a mother like Brittany Louise Taylor, like, working in mental health treatment, I've seen women stay in relationships for years because of the child. But finally, Brittany Louise Taylor got to a place where, you know, she knew that, you know, she would rather be a single mom with Rex and get out of that situation than, you know, just keep the family together, right? Because a lot of parents do this. They try to keep the family together thinking that that's benefiting the child, when in reality, it could be much worse. And Brittany Louise Taylor's, her story is, you know, like, much crazier, obviously. Like you mentioned, like, she might have been getting, you know, groomed for trafficking or whatever that is, but just realize in any type of situation, like, it is better to leave this situation and raise that child on your own than have to raise a child in that abusive household, because, like we've discussed in many, many, many other videos, a child is much more likely to have mental health issues growing up in that kind of household. You know what I mean? So again, super proud of Brittany Louise Taylor. Thank you, Shane Dawson, for doing another amazing series and giving somebody a platform to talk about domestic abuse and how it's not okay, all right? And again, I will be providing the resources down below to the hotline, so make sure that you check that out. Give it to somebody you know if you think they might be in trouble. And then again, just a quick reminder, my boy Matt and I, we are starting the Unsolicited Advice podcast. Make sure you check down in the description and in the pinned comment. Go subscribe to that channel. First episode we are recording tomorrow, Tuesday, February 12th, all right? So thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. And a huge thank you to everybody supporting the channel over on Patreon. You are all amazing. And if you would like to become a patron and get some exclusive perks and all that stuff and join our Patreon Q&A, you can click or tap right there, all right? Thanks again so much for watching. I'll see you next time.